The last thing that your son really wants to know. Justin, do you think you can catch one? See if I can not hit a light. Overhand. Yeah, even with a busted wrist, give him a round of applause. Yeah. So when you ask your son this question, it's deeply impactful. Saying, what's the most important thing to you in this relationship? What's most meaningful to you in this relationship? And interestingly enough, as I've talked to guys, they've told me one thing that has been a surprise because it's more than once that I've heard it, and that's all that they ever wanted to hear from their dad. Forget the full length of a conversation, just these words. They want to hear, I love you, and I'm proud of you. I love you, and I'm proud of you. So simple. But not everybody does that. Maybe your dad didn't do it for you, never said it to you. I followed my dad's example, not doing a great job. But to know that those two words are that deeply meaningful to a boy or a son who's older, doesn't matter if you're young or older. Knowing that, gentlemen, can transform your relationship, just saying those words. Doesn't mean you have to say them every day, but if he knows you love him and he knows you're proud of him, it brings the best out of him. Now there's a few things that we're going to expound on this point probably the most of any of them. How many of you have heard of the book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman? How many of you have heard of The 5 Languages of Apology by Gary Chapman? I got one, which is not uncommon, a few. I'll tell you why that's important in a second. Now we know the 5 love languages, if you read the book, it applies to any relationship, your relationship with your wife, your relationship with your friends. If they know how you feel, how they feel, if you know how they feel loved, it can transform the relationship. And just to throw them out, it's words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, physical touch, and gifts. Now, if you do one of those things because you think it'll be meaningful to the other person, maybe it's meaningful to you, which is what we do traditionally, typically, they might feel a sense of love, but it might not get through to them like one of the others if one of them is important. Like for me, words of affirmation are huge. When people give me words of encouragement, I feel like a superhero. I feel really good. It blesses my heart. But to somebody else, it might not matter. It might fall flat. But if you spend 12 hours with them over the weekend, now they're like, da, da, da. I feel amazing. I would encourage you to have the conversation to figure it out. Doesn't mean those 5 are the only love languages on the planet. Gary Chapman did a lot of counseling and a lot of work to find out that research. I think he did a pretty good job. Whether the content in his book is agreeable or not, the love languages aren't something that doesn't really make people go into argument. Now he took it a step further. If you're going to talk to your son and you're going to go into this world trying to figure out how he feels loved and what's most meaningful to him, you found out that these words are really important, and then you found out how you can encourage him in life by doing one of the things that's most important to him in the way that he feels loved. But check this one out. Those languages of apology, there's 5 of those too. And they're these: expressing regret. I feel terrible about what I did. Just saying that you regret what you did and it matters to you could be meaningful to your son. Accepting responsibility is another one. My wife does an amazing job at this. When we first started dating and helped build an incredible amount of trust between us, she would say, I'm sorry for what I did, and I'd say, out of grace, it's okay. And she'd say, no, it's not. And that was phenomenal to me, because she was acknowledging the full weight of what she had done, and that's what I needed to hear. That acknowledgement and I'm sorry is what is meaningful to me. Making restitution. We guys know this one pretty well. We go out and get our wives flowers if we screwed up. It's like making up for what we did wrong. We go out and get flowers. That's what making restitution is. You're trying to do something to make up for what you did, and you would ask the person what that is, your son what that is. Plan change. This one I think is the hardest one. Now, if Brad was to go back to his dad and say, Dad, how are you going to change this anger that scares me so that we can stay in relationship? Might not be easy for Dad to lay out the roadmap. He might not be ready for that. But if you can do that, it'll be extremely helpful. I'm going to take these steps. I had crazy amounts of anger from my dad. My relationship not going well with my dad. I've read books on anger, I've done studies on anger, and I needed them all to work through. But if I had a plan and I was able to share somebody that was on the receiving end of that anger, and they needed that kind of an apology, that would help me along. Last but not least is requesting forgiveness, and it sounds just like it is. Will you forgive me? To that, it's meaningful to your son. If you can figure that out, because you know if there's damage that's been done, if you can figure out the way to apologize to your son, you'll get through to him that much more. And he might need that from you to hear it in one of those ways. I know it takes work to read these books and get into the depth of what anyone might be, but if you just know them and you ask him, hey, which one of these is meaningful to you? And he lets you know, there's this connection point. And then you can do that for the rest of your days. You might even figure out what's good for you. And then if he does something that offends you, he can come to you and request forgiveness or one of the other 5. To recap those 3, in regard to going to your son, you've got, was I a superhero or the superhero you needed me to be as a father? Asking him, what do you want to do, or what do you want to accomplish in the relationship, just speaking to him directly, this is what I want, this is where I'd like it to go, this is how much time I'd like to spend, these are the conversations I'd like to have. And then finally, what's most meaningful to him in the relationship? We went through quite a bit with that one. But sometimes starting out simple is good, and you just get the ball rolling. Your son will know. There we go, now the technology's working. We've talked about if you're a son that wants to approach your dad, and we've talked about if you're a dad who wants to approach your son. How do you go about that? Gentlemen, let me tell you this. These conversations are crazy hard. You might be good at it. The guy next to you might not be great at it. Or you might need to work up to it. Or you've been having these conversations, and I applaud you if you have. It takes a lot of effort, but the effort is worth it because of how much of an impact it makes in our lives. And guys literally say, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can talk to my dad. I don't know if I can go through it. What if there's more pain on the other end? What if it doesn't go well? What if I forget everything I'm going to say when I do talk to my dad? What if I get overwhelmed? What if I've already been fighting for this for years, Matthew? What am I going to do with that? Isaiah 40:29. I want to encourage you. It says, he gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. Now that's the Fox 6 football robot. You know him, he's always like this, like, moving around. He cannot be destroyed. If you were on the field with him, you would get destroyed because he's metal in your flesh. But that's what it's like when God gives you what you need in these conversations. I said what I needed to say to my dad out of necessity. I said, Dad, I think you could have done a better job as a dad growing up. And that was after we had entered into better relationship. Didn't say a word back to me. We never talked about it again. But I was able to say it. And that was huge for me. there's also hope. This scripture where Paul's writing to the Romans in chapter 8, 24 through 25, he's talking about end times hope. You know, the hope that we have when we die, there's no more suffering, no more tears, no more pain. He's saying now hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what he sees? But if we wait for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Now, this isn't too different from father-son relationships, in that there will come a time where there's no more suffering in relationship with your son or with your dad, or the suffering that you went through that you still hold on to and dad is gone. However, there's hope in the process. And everything that I shared with you guys tonight, as you walk through any part of it, you're going to work through healing. You're going to heal just by doing it. And just by giving it to the Lord's going to work through it, and he's going to heal you through the process. The reason why I give it to you is because I don't want you to get stuck in the process. I want you to keep going. Because they're hard, because these conversations can seem impossible. But we live off hope, y'all. We live off hope. With our relationship with Jesus, he's our only hope. It's the same hope we got to think about, that it's possible that things can change for us. Doesn't mean our relationships are always going to be good with our sons, or always going to be good with our dads. But there is hope that we can rest in Jesus.